story of the election that is not really being paid that much attention to, is the explosion of African American vote. Now, African American vote, like here in California, it's big in certain areas, but the areas where the states where if there was like a national explosion of African American vote, the states that will feel it the most will be in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Georgia, that area, because that's where the highest percentages of African American vote exist, outside of Washington, D.C., for obvious reasons, history and all that stuff. And it's why the Klan was so incredibly active in Mississippi, in Alabama, is because of exactly this statistic. 36%, even after all the black people that have moved out of Mississippi over all the years because of everything that was happening, you still have a third of the state of Mississippi is African American. In Louisiana, 31%, in Alabama, 25%. You are talking about a sizable portion of the vote, not a majority, because it's still Hispanic, Asian, and Native American. These are still only about 41% of the Mississippi vote is non-white, almost 1% of the vote of Louisiana is non-white, Alabama is 32% non-white. Now, the reason why this is important is because of what happened, and that is that the supermajority for the Republican Party in Mississippi has been overturned because of these flips. But that story kind of starts explaining about what is happening, as well as the re-election in Newberry, Alabama, and of course in Birmingham. And these states and these cities have these huge African American voting percentages. And what is happening is that they're coming out. And probably the biggest reason why they're coming out is because African Americans happen to know when white people go crazy. And they know when white people go crazy, you have two choices. You either vote like crazy and you get out there and you work like crazy, because that's basically what happens. They're looking at ICE doing all of its crazy stuff, and they're realizing, oh yeah, that was the Klan. You know, they're not showing their faces and all this stuff, and they're beating people and abusing people and using, you know, tear gas as, you know, like they're using tear gas like it's air freshener. They're shooting pepper balls into priests who are, you know, doing what they're doing, trying to arrest black congressmen who want nothing more than to do what their constitutional duty is, and that is to be able to walk into an ICE facility and check to whether or not people are being treated humanely. African Americans who have friends or family or whatever that are in jail, and obviously justice has always been a very big portion of African American principle and voting principle, because so much injustice was done against African Americans. Therefore, justice is a huge portion of how they vote. So how people who are treated in prison are important. How law enforcement reacts is important, because law enforcement was used at its most ruthlessly aggressive method to people who are literally alive today. People who survived Jim Crow, separate but equal, all that stuff. The legal apartheid we lived under in this country. The apartheid system that we lived under literally educated the Nazis how to write the Nuremberg laws. The Nuremberg laws were written by basically replicating what the United States was doing with separate but equal. So they know this stuff. African Americans who understand their history, they don't even have to understand history. They have to understand their grandpa, who will tell them, yeah, white people are going nuts. When white people go nuts, you get to the polls, you do whatever is required to correct that. Because we white people do terrible things when we start going nuts. We start World War freaking II. I mean, Birmingham today is known as Birmingham. Back in the day, it was called Bombingham because white people were going crazy. So what do? They get out there and they voted, and they flipped seats in Mississippi and took away the majority, the supermajority. But that vote is only the beginning. This isn't an off-year election. If that vote were to unite, and African Americans and Hispanics, Latinos, voted together because you both are the targets of ICE. ICE's bullcrap and the civil war within the Republican Party, where African American conservatives, Latino conservatives, and Indian conservatives are beginning to realize, oh yeah, we've been looking the other way and allowing our party to become so comfortable for people who praise Hitler, people who are neo-Nazis, white supremacists, that we keep looking the other way with these people. And right now, those people have grown to such a sizable position within leadership within the Republican Party that they're comfortable openly attacking people who are non-Christian, or at least non-Christian towards their particular Christian identity, that do not praise Hitler, and that to say that people who praise Hitler, that the Republican Party should be accommodating because of the First Amendment and their freedom of speech, and not basically doing what you're supposed to do with a person who praises Hitler, and that's kick his ass. And that's to explain to them what they are is stupid and incompetent, and that you don't want anything to do with them. And the Republican Party's in the middle of that. And since the Republican Party's in the middle of that, hopefully that is educating those moderate, middle-of-the-road type African-American vote to realize that, no, you don't understand these people. You don't try to understand Klan members because they're going to lynch your black ass. Bingo. If you're Latino, they're going to do the same thing to you, which is that, it may not be lynching, but they'll just deport you and send you off to CCOT. Because that was what the mass deportation rules did, that Trump idolized when he literally brought up the term of, what was Operation Wetback, which, and I'm not trying to use the term derogatory, because that's where the term comes from. The term wetback comes from Operation Wetback. And Trump is doing this. What you are seeing is what that was. This massively funded ICE to go out and do the things that ICE is doing. So what you do is you resist it. But if you get these forces to come together, the Asians, because you probably are Indian, or maybe you don't, maybe you're not totally Christian, you're going to be targeted, or even if you're not, what was it, the South Korean company Mitsubishi, Korean investment into Georgia was destroyed because of racist BS. So you're Asian, you are on that chopping block too. You're targets of that too. So if you could get 40% of the population of Mississippi, 40% of the population of Louisiana, 32% of the population of Alabama, that wins elections. That controls elections. And that's why what happened in Mississippi is so important. Because if there is going to be a wake-up of black vote, it will be seen in the South more than it will be seen anywhere. So like, share, subscribe, debate with me, talk with me. Would love to be able to have that discussion with you about how the African American vote has started to explode and unite with Latino vote. Or am I right or am I wrong? Particularly in the South. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.